This is lesson 332 in Intro to Rome, and we've got an essential question here. What were the lasting characteristics of the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire? Two different entities. And we've got a warm-up question. Let's hark back to this thing that we talked about before with Alexander the Great. What is Hellenism? And why was this Alexander of Macedonia considered, quote, great? Well, we've got a picture of Europe right here. In addition to Greece, a significant Western classical civilization was ancient Rome. And we got the arrow right here pointing toward this Italian peninsula. And you can see Greece around all these purple parts. But this Roman Empire just eclipses Greece because that's all the orange stuff. And look how much bigger it is. And look how much it completely surrounds and really incorporates just the purple part. So what was the impact of geography on Rome? One geographical feature was the fact that it was in Italy, and Italy sticks out into the middle of the Mediterranean. So Rome was located on the Italian peninsula along the Mediterranean Sea, and look at all the access it has to all of these other places around the Mediterranean with which it can trade. The Romans were also influenced by the nearby Greek colonies. Some of those colonies were actually on the Italian peninsula. In fact, Greek people had a significant presence on the Italian peninsula. So the religion of ancient Rome was pretty much the same as that of the ancient Greeks. Roman religion was a polytheistic religion, and it was based on all of the Greek gods, although usually they changed their names. For example, Jupiter was the Roman name for Zeus, and Mercury was the Roman name for Hermes. Neptune was the Roman name for Poseidon. Pluto was the Roman name for Hades. Saturn was the Roman name for Cronus. Venus was the Roman name for Aphrodite. Notice I'm picking names of gods in the Roman pantheon that became the names of planets. That's no accident. The language of ancient Rome. The Roman language was called Latin, and its writing system was phonetic, and it was based on the Greek, which, as we know, was based on the Phoenician. The culture of ancient Rome. The Romans greatly admired Greek achievements. They thought the Greeks were cool, and Roman architecture and art and literature borrowed heavily from Greek styles. Like, for example, the Greek agoras, the markets. Roman cities had what they called forums for markets and for public gatherings. So the Romans called it a forum. The Greeks called it the agora. The society of ancient Rome. Roman society was divided among three major groups. At the top were the nobles, and they were called the Patricians. And keep in mind, I've talked about this before, the word patrician actually means father, so they considered themselves to be the fathers, the parents of the rest of the people, with that kind of parental authority over the people. And they controlled most of the land. They also held the key military and government positions, and they made up about 5% of the Roman population, so it was very few of them. This picture right here shows the typical life of the patricians. They typically lived out in the country with a really nice house with a big atrium in the middle, and so they lived in wealth and luxury. Most people, however, were commoners, and they were called the Plebeians. The Plebeians were people who were farmers, shopkeepers, peasants. The Plebeians paid the majority of the taxes. They made up the majority of the Roman subjects. Notice I didn't say citizens, I said subjects. So the plebeians were regular people like you and me. And this picture shows the typical life of plebeians, particularly urban life. You know, it was the patricians that could afford land and live out in the country. But the poor, they were stuck in the cities. And so you typically had a scene like this, where the plebeians lived. They lived they lived in very crowded conditions, not a lot of privacy, not a lot of open spaces. At the bottom of society, you had the slaves, and they accounted for 30 to 40% of the entire population. See, the government of ancient Rome. Rome was originally ruled by Etruscan kings. The Etruscans were people that occupied this area really before the Romans. But in 509 BC, the Romans created a republic. So that's huge for us because we're going to see that word republic over and over again, really to the end of the course. And a republic is a form of government in which the citizens have the power to elect their representatives in that government. And what makes a republic most different from, let's say, a monarchy is that a republic has no king. They've opted out of having a king. They have chosen not to have one. So the Roman Senate was made up of patricians. And like I said, these were wealthy landowners. They inherited their positions in the Senate. The Senate was the legislative body. The Senate made the laws. Plebeians could vote for senators, but they could not be senators. Later on, plebeians were allowed to join the Senate. Tribunes were an assembly of plebeians. Plebeians were barred by law from holding most government positions. And the tribunes basically protected the rights of plebeians from abuses by the Senate. So plebeians could vote for these tribunes and in fact be tribunes, but tribunes were not senators. You also had consuls. Consuls were kind of like co-presidents. The consuls commanded the army, they directed the government, they could veto each other on decisions that they made. And they could only hold office for 1 year. After 1 year, your term was over. Here's another way of looking at the government of ancient Rome. And one of the things that this tells you is that the Senate comprised 300 members. So it was a 300 man Senate. Our Senate, for example, has 100 members. And this shows the definitions of the consuls. It also shows to the right a typical slave, a typical plebeian. Notice the plebeian's got work tools in his hands because he works with his hands. He's not educated. He's not rich. Over on our left, you've got patricians, and they dress a lot nicer. They're a lot richer, a lot more educated. They've got a lot more power. The most important feature of this republic was the Senate, whose 300 members were elected by citizens to make laws and taxes. So the law code of ancient Rome. In 451 BC, government officials wrote down Rome's laws into what they called the 12 tables, which were hung in the forum, that's the marketplace, for all citizens to see. Everybody could see the laws, everybody could read the laws, everybody knew what was expected of them, and it was, in a way, it was very similar to Hammurabi's Code in the sense that Hammurabi's Code was put on those pillars for everybody to read. So the 12 tables were based on the idea that all citizens had a right to the protection of the law. For example, being innocent until you were proven guilty. The Roman military. Rome was protected by an advanced army that was divided into groups of 5,000 soldiers, and these groups of 5,000 were called legions. And then each legion was further divided into smaller groups of 80 men apiece called a century. You might think that a century should have 100 men in it since the word century means 100, but no, it had 80. Roman soldiers also used various large advanced war machines. For example, the catapulta could shoot large arrows, and they could really pack a wallop there. The giant ballista could hurl stones for 300 meters, crushing the enemy or destroying the walls of an enemy fort. The most powerful catapult was the onager, and it was also called the wild ass because of its deadly kick.